with Vignesh Kumar. Vignesh, welcome to the Spark and Forge podcast. With your experience in AI and more importantly, your work that you do beyond your corporate world, I wanted to have a chance to speak with you to understand your perspective on this field and what opportunity lies. Thank you for making the time to join.
Thank you. Thank you for having me, Subrata. I think it's a pleasure being here today.
Yes, look forward to it. So, what we are going to do is to explore how AI can drive growth for startups. We will try and look at it from identifying high impact use cases to building scalable solutions. So, it's like a complete journey, if you will. And we will try to make these conversations relevant for startup founders here in India
Hmm.
who may be considering AI as a growth levers and
Yeah,
hopefully give them some practical insights and strategies by the end of it.
perfect.
But before that, Vignesh, tell us where you grew up, tell us
Hmm.
your journey into tech, and at what point in time AI really catch your interest.
Sure. Glad to do that. So I was born and brought up in Bombay, now Mumbai, and my dad was an engineer. So he worked with Larsen and Toubro, a mechanical engineer. So maybe that's where engineering as a, curiosity for me came up. I used to visit his once a year we had this Vishwakarma Puja where all the families used to go to the place where dad used to work, right? So I used to see these huge machines and cranes and all these sophisticated instruments, and used to ask those curious young kid questions about how things are working, etc. And dad used to love those conversations. He used to explain me what he was doing. Very proudly, he used to show the things that he has built, right? Unlike what I can show, it was very clear what he was building. So that's where it all started. Uh, if at all there was a dilemma, it was only between should I become a fighter pilot or a pilot or get into engineering. At no point I had any other career aspirations. First priority was being a fighter pilot, but it didn't materialize. So very quickly, the option was engineering. And I think didn't think through too much at that time. Just followed my dad's footsteps, maybe. So went and did the mechanical engineering. But by the first year, second year, I could see that engineering as a concept has evolved. And though I think I'm talking about 99, 2000 sort of, right? So the dot com burst, everything I saw in that during my college days, and it was very clear that the traditional way that my dad was explaining engineering was evolving into a very sophisticated programming based engineering, right? And we might call it as computer science as a stream, but that is where it all came together. So I did a parallel course in NIT where I used to study database, I used to study programming languages, etc. And when time came for me to jump into the industry, rather than going into the mechanical field, I got a great opportunity to jump into uh, the developing side of the software side. So work with banks to start with in their technical division, and that's where I think my journey started, Subrata, because
Great.
once you get into the hardcore
Yep.
Unix C++ coding, that's where you usually get
Yeah.
a sneak
Yeah.
peek into it.
You work with some of the big names, big players in the industry, Cisco, VMware, Oracle, but at the same time, you still make time to advise startups. So, do
Hmm.
they come to meet you over the weekend, or your companies are not making you busy enough?
I think the weekends, it is a stretch for sure, right? It's maybe it is just that in the last 2 years is when I have been able to find some time. Yes, my daughter keeps cribbing about my weekends are also getting busy, but that's the only way, right? You have to, your peak days are pretty tied up, pretty intense, and weekends also it's that 4 hours in the morning. Usually it is online, unless we are traveling to some for a talk or anything. That's how we uh, and I inevitably tell it as a we because fortunate to have a wife who is also in the same domain, right? So she and me, it becomes like a, how do I put it? It doesn't look like an additional work because it's our weekend gig type. So it would have been tougher had it been me doing it alone. Then obviously I would have been missing all the family stuff. But since we both are in this together, we enjoy mentoring, traveling, talking to startups.
That's amazing. Okay, so let's move on and get into first defining the space. And we are talking about AI as a growth lever for startups. How does I resonate with startup founders? It
Hmm.
depends upon who you really ask.
Hmm.
What do you think will resonate with startup founders that way that you see?
Yeah, I think yeah, AI is, I compare it with some of the biggest technology shifts that we have had in the last 77 or 8 decades, right? Like if you look at it, maybe it all started with the huge IBM machines, the mainframes, which allowed us to scale to the level that we could do a lot of compute, right? So maybe that's where I think I learned a lot when we had a conversation with, when you told how those good old days used to look like, right? Then the big change for me was the technology, the internet revolution. Right? I think it changed the entire game with which information could be tapped. Then it was the iPhone moment or the smartphone moment. And for me, that's where I think AI is now, it's not a fad at all. It is here to stay. It is going to accelerate the technology curve that we have built over the 7 decades or 8 decades, thanks to all the pioneers in the past. Why it is defining, Subrata, when I see this, I don't see AI as a use case concentrated to a particular domain, a particular industry, or a particular, let's say, a field of like interest sort of. When I look at, especially when I look at startups, the pace at which AI can be absorbed is unparalleled, right? In the past, when we had to adopt a technology, there were some entry barriers. There were either the price was too high or the infra requirement was too high. All these entry barriers are really broken or shattered because of AI. Number one, and the critical thing is I've seen couple of very clear segments coming out in this AI area, right? When it comes to not just startups, but even big conglomerates. One, there is a group which is in the core AI evolution or the innovation sort of. So we can call it as AI foundational products. They build the AI foundation elements. It could be the infra layers like the Nvidias or the semiconductors companies of the world, or it could be the hyperscalers which provide you that infra to play with. And we have a layer of middleware and software which is on top, leveraging the stack to build phenomenally, what is it, transformative models, right? Like what we could have never thought about in the last like decade sort of. So that is one area that innovation keeps going. Maybe uh, it's very concentrated. It could be 20 to 30% of the companies are there doing it, and it is getting consolidated. It is very quickly getting consolidated. The bigger chunk, which is what I'm seeing, the 70%, 80% of the players are the AI, I would say products having AI. Companies building products with AI capabilities. And that is where the buzz has really taken over, right? Because if you look at it, every company, be it healthcare, finance, manufacturing, any domain that you look at, there is no use case where AI cannot play a role. Yes, it varies from 20% to 90% adoption, but every use case, if when I analyze it or when I talk to a startup, I see that there is a very valid use case that can have an AI impact. So that is why you'll see so many of the AI products coming which cater to these use cases. And that section of startups is where there is a huge push, because now it is about adopting what the 20% is building, choosing the right models, choosing the right frameworks, building AI products with customer in mind, taking it to the customer so that the use cases now look far more streamlined. So questions on what is a pricing strategy, what is my GTM, what is my return on investment. All these are the ones that are really coming up on the other side. So clearly these two are very, very active spaces, and a lot of great work is actually being done by startup ecosystem because they are so nimble, right? Like they are able to adapt to the constant evolving AI landscape.
Let's see how we can explore some of them. But before that, many investors may be listening to us and thinking, well, this space is very exciting, overwhelming. How can we make money?
So there are only two ways. It's a very traditional, like say, economics or financial
Hmm.
concept, right? That if a company has to really uh, get uh, profitable or to increase their there are only two ways, right? Either you focus on the top line, which is the revenue goes up,
Yeah.
or you basically focus on your bottom line. And that is what I think beautifully AI is doing, right? On one side, AI is breaking and creating new businesses or like categories or breaking into new markets which never existed in the past. Example, uh, the smart city concepts, the innovation around let's say the energy efficiency, sustainability. All these we never had a potential to even simulate things so that investment never went there, or we never were able to deliver products which were going to have a significant impact. And that's why it's creating new markets. We see new products coming in, and it is creating that top line for companies. Now, the second one is the dollars that we were leaving on the table, right? The inefficiencies that we were having. I mean, something that could be now done in half a day, we used to take a week in the past. And that is a huge play because I know that is where the question comes about will I lose my job? What will happen to the workforce, etc. But if you look at it, every technology that made us more efficient, the pain of maybe job losses was not more than a few years, right? Because then what happens is that we have the uh, capacity released from the human workforce, which can now again come back to build those innovative products. So that's why I think usually the when a valuation discussion happens, uh, VCs are really interested to know which side of the equation are you in. Are you into
Have they
the
started making money?
not the big ones, right? Because even the if you look at the big players, they're all pumping in billions, uh, and that is a big question that everyone is asking, right? Like, what is the ROI on it? And but it's my personal it's my personal take that I think the ROI calculation is coming too quick for at least for the people who are doing the deep tech work. Because when we start monetizing a very highly transformative, disruptive technology very quickly, we don't really understand what is the ROI. And I think that is where there are two sides of the coin here. Right? Two sets of people who are fighting it out. One saying that we should continue investing, we should go deeper, make bigger models, make it really as close as possible to AGI. And there is another set which says that guys, you just are pumping it into a sinkhole, nothing. What's the ROI on
Do you think internet boom in 1999, 2000,
it?
when every company wanted to come onto the internet from brick and
Hmm.
mortar? Do
Hmm.
you think AI today is almost similar to what we have experienced in those days?
Yeah, I think that uh, that happens with every big technology shift. You are well aware of that, Subrata. That especially that the .com burst and the internet burst that we went through. Yes, it's uh, very similar kind of environment here, right? I think that is why people are getting nervous. That it's like the key players in those days, the way their stocks went up, the key players of today, the way their stocks have gone up, if you put it on a time scale -20, it is almost identical, right? I'm just not taking the names of companies here, but it's very obvious. The track is very similar. But one thing I just feel we might be blessed a bit here is AI is not a 2 year, 3 year gig, right? I think the core people who still are working on AI are actually the data scientists who have gone through the journey of looking at analytics and ML evolution, right? We didn't land here magically, and it's not like a new technology that we have brought in. We know what were the capabilities of the analytics, neural networks, then how we slowly moved into machine learning, and then we have come here. So yes, it is. I do see. That's the first question I ask many of the startups who come in. Are you force fitting AI into your use case? Because uh, it could be some of the word AI now gives a slightly higher bump on your valuation. People think that it's like that magic sauce that you sprinkle on top and everything looks very cool, sort of, right? But that will eventually die down in the next. That is where I think the next 2 years, since we have now moved into the conversation about use cases, I think the questions are we are getting started on those use cases. Like, hey, how much do you need AI in this? Like, if it is a data, like you're just running a crawler to get data, put it into some structure. Yes, by all means, give me a use case with 80-90% adoption of AI. But when you're going to do a selling to at a ELA level, like a multi-billion, $1 million deal, how much of AI you might put you into that use case? I think all these kind of questions, when we ask, people might start looking at it in a much more prudent.
Early stage startups or growth stage startups thinking about leveraging AI in their business
Mhm.
based upon what you just talked about? What do you think should resonate? How should they think about?
Yeah, I think
How would you define it for them?
it's a very traditional product development mindset that we start here,
Should
right?
they
Like,
jump into it? Should they wait for some time? Should they test the water first?
I would say, see, everything that starts is from defining what is there are only two reasons why a company might come up with a product or uh, come into the market, right? One, they see an opportunity which has never been tapped, and that means it's a need which has a customer base, and that need currently is totally not catered to by anyone. So that is one reason why someone might do it. Like how social media was not there at all, and when we bought the Orkuts and the Facebooks and those basically created that. That is number one. Second, we see that there is a existing problem which needs to be mitigated. I think yes, there are technologies, or there could be a way to do things in that use case, but unfortunately, it might not be the most efficient, or it has a lot of issues and problems. Like supply chain, when we look at it, it exists today. Supply chain works, but is it the most efficient? Is the question that we ask. Right? So when we evaluate or I start conversation with a very early stage startup, the question is I don't like to start with a tech conversation. I don't want it to be a tech stack conversation to start with. Hey, I have built the best intent based search for. The question is, okay, what is it really catering to? What are you? Is there a problem that you have identified, or is there a need? So typically, Subrata, that is where it would be better for any startup to first identify where they are going to play in these two buckets. The moment they identify that, then they will start understanding how big that problem is, or how big that opportunity is. And that is where you slowly start trickling down to your addressable market. Then, then when you build all those calculations, you know whether implementing a high cost AI is going to be even beneficial in the ROI calculation. When there are only a few thousand customers, do you need a very, very high end AI implementation? All these questions come when you start with the foundational basic things, right? Between these two buckets where do you play?
Say startups here in India, what according to you are the top AI use cases that you see that could open up some new opportunities for the startups to pursue?
Yes. See, there are slightly, uh, I mean, two different options here, right?
Yeah.
When I think we need to be balanced in, I would at least want to be, I'll encourage the startups, I'll put it in this way, I'll encourage the startups to look at both dimensions, that segments that we spoke about. If we lose focus on the core tech, the deep tech that we are talking about, we might then just become another services kind of player, right? Because someone is building the core technology that is defining the market, and we are just adopting it to build wrappers or productize the foundational technology. I think that is where, if we have to scale as India as a growth engine of technology, we have to balance between these two. Where we are invested, we need to have startups who really can go deeper into the technology aspect, think about like what could be the next SLM, or do we really need a LLM, or what are the like innovation on the tech stack itself, how can it be done. That will enable us to have a very robust ecosystem, because we have always been very strong on the other side, where we have been able to identify use cases, be it healthcare, finance, customer success, any use case. From a serviceability standpoint, we have been exceptional. We have been able to scale, adopt, do it at a scale where other players cannot do it. I mean, supporting customers across the globe. Those are all well-known success factors for us, right? So that's why I would say balancing these two are very important. Having said that, if we have to really, really tailor something for India specific, there are many use cases that can really, and I slightly go into the social impact of these technologies, right? If I have to build that, there is huge potential that we can build with very quick ROI on uh, areas like agriculture, areas like healthcare, areas like finance, which especially on microfinancing. I mean, these are all the
Even
pillars which
education.
can education exactly.
And when
I
the
think
companies
I
like
should
Sarvam AI is doing, in terms of they have now 10 languages, and I believe they will expand it further. Amazing innovation, and the way that it can
absolutely.
enable so many people. And especially, like you said, in agriculture, a lot of people probably do not know how to even read or write. But if we can give them the voice, they can at least
Yeah,
communicate with that and get some useful information. So there are pockets, and there are already some investments and companies who are driving and focusing some of these. So from your interactions, have you found some of them who are working on some exciting projects without naming the company?
absolutely. I think that is why I really take my time off to interact with them, because these are not the I mean, I'll take a couple of examples, right? One
Yeah.
is what we were talking to a startup who wanted to take diagnostics to the last mile, sort of like currently a village which is not connected properly. I mean, giving blood for sampling also is a nightmare, because by the time it reaches the hub, which is where the diagnosis happens, apparently many of the samples are not even valid. I imagine the plight of people who are in those districts or rural pockets who are deprived of even diagnostics, right? And that is what they were working on, where they wanted to take this AI based endpoint machine. So you don't need cloud also, right? You don't need that. It was an endpoint machine which can run diagnostics at that place, sort of. And that is one use case, right? I'm just I can't I can't even put a ROI calculation on this, because imagine how many lives might be. We can't put a tag on life, so that's why I don't even go into the ROI calculations there. Number two, many of the problems, especially with so much of climate changes that we are seeing, the weather patterns changing, predicting the weather pattern. And there was a startup where it was working on predicting the weather pattern and telling the farmers how they can do multi-cropping in a year. Because the biggest challenge that we see is in many of the rural areas, people are doing agriculture like how they did 3 generations back. Their grandfathers did. Those days, things were predictable, the air qualities were different, things were not as dynamic. So they did one crop. Then they let that land almost heal itself for a few months, and then they again repeated the pattern, right? But now the startups are, one startup I was talking was very keenly working on putting all these dynamics like the soil pattern, the soil, like I'm not getting the technical name, but it is more like the enrichment of how rich the soil is after one crop
Yeah.
has been delivered. Uh, then the water table analysis, then the climatic prediction for the next 6 months, put that into their model, and they are trying to find for that particular parameters what could be the next 3 to 4 months optimized crop that the farmer can do it. And add to that, Subrata, the Sarvams and of the world, that the, we don't need any coding experience. We don't need a fancy app to input things. Okay, it's all NLP based now. They talk in their local language. They're planning to integrate it in that way so that the conversations are becoming that much more enriching. So these are just few examples, right? I can keep
So
talking about few
I
more.
startups perspective, what should they do to really identify the high impact use cases? It is equally important to really find out where I should invest my time, what I should do. So is there a criteria which they should bear in mind to determine what should be the high impact use cases and what should not be?
Yeah, I mean, fantastic question. I think there is no straightforward framework for this, unfortunately. But when these startups come for evaluation, the only two things I ask at least is, number one, like, what is the hypothesis that you have built and based on what? Because the more it is data driven, it is far more easier for us to digest the problem. And that is where I think taking that additional few weeks to gather the right set of data and then looking at the problem from both customer opinion or qualitative aspect and then validating it with a quantitative aspect gives you a complete picture to like what is the scale of the problem. Because I think both sides, when either they choose either the qualitative too much or when someone goes too quantitative, that's when the discrepancies start coming in, right? Because someone just goes by what they heard and they have started working on something that also doesn't fly many a times. Or sometimes people purely look at data and they don't validate it with the ground reality, only to realize that the data is skewed or the data is no longer relevant. So we guide people to keep this balance, take data and the feedback that's coming from the customer, actually talking to the customer. There's nothing to replace going to the field and understanding the problem, Subrata. That's the
But is there
uh,
a
it,
understanding about the customer value that it will generate? Is that
hmm,
a top of the criteria, top of the priority?
absolutely. I think there are multiple. If I look at it, right, like the first driver that we usually have is a change in the customer behavior, is what we see as a root cause of many proposals that come in. I mean, even if you look at it, a few years back, a 10-minute delivery might have not even rang a bell with anyone. Like, why would you need 10-minute delivery, sort of, right? It was a huge change in the demography of the customers that actually made it as a success criteria. Same thing, right? Like if in future we want to, example, extrapolating that same use case. Now, if some startup comes up with like, hey, I'm going to be a startup delivering products through drones without any uh, last mile agent. Now, the question that we now really need to ask is, makes sense. But in a country like India, like which is so concentrated in cities, how accurate would that be? Number one. now, even if we accept the fact that there is a need, the first question that you look out is for the customer, right? Like, customer, would I today, as a customer who is using a 10-minute delivery, I see someone at my door, sixth minute giving a bag. I have ways to check it. If I see something is not there, I can have an interaction right away. How much of a significant benefit I get when the drone delivers it? So that day we were having a very hilarious conversation. A lady asked, like, so Vignesh, will it get delivered in 2 minutes? Like, I don't know, like, if I don't think it is going to be how big a difference it makes when someone gets it at 5 minutes and 2 minutes, right? Especially when you're ordering for some vegetables and all. So that is one side of the story, right? Because we need to understand how significantly game changing would this technology be when it is going to be implemented. Now, this is the emotional side, the qualitative side, the customer behavior side, etc. But the startup also needs to understand other things. Now, the spatial data that we have, the most of our coordinates that we use is a two-dimensional coordinates. It's a longitude, latitude. Now, in a apartment system, like, say, uh, in the high rises that we see in the tier one cities, which are the biggest adopters of this 10-minute delivery, how accurately can a drone just knock on my flat number, which is in the 15th floor, 20th floor? Will it come to my balcony? Understanding the third dimension, right? Because now it has to understand the height of where it's going to deliver it. Or is there any other innovative way? Do we have a data set like that? So questions on the data side now also needs to be validated, because yes, even if we prove that there is a need, is there a technology that can enable it to happen, right? So that's why I think marrying these two kind of conversations upfront helps the startup have the actual vision of what the problem is and what they need to do.
So, on the use case front, can we sort of think about, especially from the startup perspective, there are two broad categories. One, I think you alluded to in the beginning itself. One, definitely productivity improvement, efficiency gain is a great opportunity. Corporates are doing it. Why shouldn't the startups? Can I get things done fairly quickly? Can I deliver more products? Can I really optimize my cost? So this is something which is a clear no-brainer, where automation, AI, you know opportunities to use them extensively rise. And when you're talking about getting around 30 to 40% productivity improvement, why should you not? So
Yes.
that is one clear case. The second case, in terms of if you are building a product and you're trying to drive growth by enabling through AI, and that is where many such data points and criteria needs come in. But clearly, am I really building something that will generate value, that will benefits my customers?
Absolutely. Just maybe just to maybe just to add on to that use case, right? So if you look at the same drone, or the let's just take it further. The drone. If I was a drone company, I would be more focused. I mean, yes, this is a segment which I will not lose sight of. But in my current world, if I look at it, there are so many hazardous places where humans go and risk their lives, be it a fire, be it a industrial area where there is toxic chemicals, radiation, etc. Right? I would love to be in that space, solving the problem immediately, where someone can remotely do that stuff. Fly a drone and get things. It's a win-win for everyone, right? So that's why I think. By no means I'm saying that people should lose track of that use case that can evolve in future. It is going to be a reality that in future drones will deliver stuff at home. But how do you get there? It need not be an A to B story, right? It can be that you build from A, have products which are catering to something else, and then come to B.
And that is where I think the next question comes into play. How do I really build an MVP? How
Hmm.
do I really build a POC? Because nothing like validating with the customers.
Yeah, exactly.
So if you are building a product driven by AI,
Yeah. I think MVP, I tell this time and again with most of the startups who come out uh, when I mentor, right? Like MVP is not the, I think many a times the MVP is so loaded as a product that it becomes a nightmare to even test the market. I think that is where founders really need to wear um, uh, their I mean, be unbiased in what they are expecting from their product teams when they are factoring or calibrating what should go into their MVP. I saw a MVP very recent conversation. The MVP was 90% of the full-fledged product portfolio. And I'm like, with the kind of resources you have, with the kind of timelines that you're targeting, there's no way you're going to hit 90% of the full stack product. Yes, you can be very aspirational that I want to bedazzle my customer when I go live with every possible feature, right? But I think rather than going that route, it is very important that your MVP reflects on what your core product really stands for. When I say that, just taking an example, right? The same example. If you are in that drone company and you are now chosen your field as last mile delivery of essential healthcare products to tribal regions of India, example. Now, at that point, is 10-minute delivery a really important factor, or is it like your accuracy to land that drone should be 5 feet, 10 feet? It doesn't matter, to be very honest, right? Because it might be that accuracy might be needed when you are in a densely populated city, but when you are dealing with a tribal region, even a accuracy of 100 meters sometimes is life saving for someone, right? So that is where these features really need to be double checked, recalibrated. Start with something that you can deliver on time, prove your capacity, prove your concept. That go to the field, directly show one or two use cases where two districts were changed. In this case, just taking the same example, two districts, the overall health parameter increased over 3 months' time just by building the three basic things, right? A reliable drone, very strong navigation system, and interactive, maybe last module where you can talk to the person who is basically taking it from you or trying to consume that product. These three could be a very simple features that you can just start it. After that, you can keep building on the speed, the capacity of payload, everything that can be added in the future. But when you start with this, you hit the road very quickly. You get to understand what the problems are, where the challenges are. And for all you know, that is all the market needs. Market might not need something fancier than that. So I think that is where MVP conversations are the ones where we have a lot of conversations because most of the times MVPs are feature richer than feature poorer. That is where we
Yeah.
have to keep them honest that, hey guys, are you really overdoing this thing?
So in India, sectors like healthcare, for example, or finance, they will come with certain regulatory compliances to take care of privacy, data compliance, many other things. And of
Hmm.
course, if you are building an AI product, you also need to worry about the real data. So, how should a startup in India in these sectors get some real feedback from the customers?
I think, especially when it comes to healthcare, finance, the data becomes the biggest challenge, right? Because
Yeah.
uh, I mean, finance mainly because of the regulatory compliance issues. Healthcare because you're dealing with personal data, right? You don't want
Yes.
anyone's data to be leaked. So in these, I think what we usually tell people is do not assume some of the. I mean, there are foundational rules and regulations, right? Like in the Europe, you have GDPR and other all these concepts which are mandatory. Here, like finance, if you look at it, you have to have your KYCs and other things. And by no means I'm expert in that field at all. But when I ask them about security, the best way to deal that is get a that's why this role is getting very, I would not say hot, but this role is getting a lot of focus in the last 6 months. It's called as the AI ethics officer now, right? Because that person under that ethical governance has to look at the regulatory aspects and also the right use of that data. So one is when the data is being collected, is it within the regulatory framework? And if it is within the regulatory framework and it is stored in a particular database, the consumption of that also has to be in an ethical way. So these two charters are becoming very, very important when we look at AI. And the ethical AI ethics and governance officer's role is becoming that much more very, very important uh, regulator type in most of the use cases. And that's the reason startups, when they feel that their product is to some scale, or they are uh, moving from a beta with a controlled environment into a open environment. Before doing that switch over, it's always advisable to get to the experts who are at this point. There are very few people who really know it end to end. That is a challenge, right? But it is better to have that conversation. Get into the data architecture architects to start with, because many of the data architects have a lot of information about how to safeguard the data. So that it all starts from there, right? So get their opinion, safeguard it, and then the second part of ethical use of it obviously comes into picture.
If you're working with some healthcare or finance companies, it's about really having the data anonymization, encryption, data privacy. You think it is important to think about and really put some
Yeah,
more effort and get some
it is.
expertise on board. Either you get expertise on board,
Uh-huh.
or you partner with few people who can provide you that expertise.
So the good part, Subrata, that we are having now is we are getting many. I'm seeing a lot of action at the big companies or the big players, and also at a startup layer where people are building these platforms. So now what has happened is people understand that if I just give you a set of 10, 15 AI modules and leave it to the startup to design everything, validate this, is my data really compliant, where will I run the risk of not meeting the regulatory frameworks, it is going to slow down the growth and evolution of that startup, right? And that is why a horizontal is slowly getting evolved, both at an
Hmm.
enterprise level and at a startup level. I have many startups we speak to who are now actually building that ecosystem of platform. So they
Hmm.
have what they do is they do the data pipelines. They know that it's like telling the startup, you don't worry about. It's like telling the driver of a car, right? You don't worry about the car. You focus on your driving. Very similar. What they have done is they are the data pipelines, the data, how the data needs to be on. It should be on cloud or it should be on-prem. What is the security layer that needs to be done? What is the persona-based exposure of the data needs to be done? What type of reporting is needed to be compliant with the local governance? All that is actually becoming like a company in itself. Like there are multiple players who are building that platform, and that to a great extent is alleviating the pain of startups when they really are asking these questions. Because if you onboard even on the big hyperscalers, right, they have now very beautiful platforms where not just their proprietary products, they are giving exposure to multiple other LLMs, multiple databases. They are saying that, hey, you trust our platform. We have done all the validation from data, from security angle. We have the best encryption logics at this point in time. So you don't need to worry about what is under the hood. You just focus on your product development, right? So I think
Hmm.
that is becoming a very, very strong use case. We are seeing a lot of players. The smaller ones who are startups are coming up because they're helping their peer startups. In
Hmm.
many cases, they're cheaper. They are very customizable. It's not like a big player that you're going to just interact with. They are very nimble, sit with you, and they try to build that. So that space is actually evolving rapidly, and
Mm.
what is happening under the hood is actually very exciting. That data cleansing companies, data validation companies,
Mm.
companies which are generating synthetic data which is in a controlled environment, validating it. So basically, there is a complete ecosystem which is under the hood, which is
Mm.
actually the very robust at this point in time.
That's exciting, right? And once they've identified the POC, how do they really think about scale?
If so, I think the point of scaling comes when your early adopters, I mean, just going by the traditional product life cycle, right? Like when the initial adopters are convinced, the biggest jump is that chasm that we need to jump when we go into the mainstream, right? That is where the scaling issue comes in because um, yes, it becomes a problem if you have developed on a stack which cannot be scaled. That is why having that technology discussion,
Upfront.
balancing it upfront, and not over rotating on it, because you don't want to have 10 customers predicting a stack for a million customers, because that's not realistic. I think having a very like a crawl walk run type of approach where you say, okay, I have maybe my goal now is to move from 1,000 customers to 100,000 customers. So how different will my system look between these two? Then from 100,000 to 500,000 or a million, uh, planning it out in that chunks really help, because then you don't want to be investing millions on systems which are like for million customers when you are just dealing with 1,000 customers. So that's why I think that's why having a solution architect who can understand that particular business, how it is growing, and also translate that into a system evolution is very important.
Yeah. So in India, for how can startup really balance the local customizations with the standardization that is needed for scalability?
Yeah, I think so. One good thing that's happened is we have not, if you look at our adoption, it is not only focused on, say, cloud or only focused on on-prem. So the hybrid is where eventually everyone starts with taking a like a binary decision, saying that I will be only on cloud, then someone grows only on prem, and finally most of them come and say, hey, hybrid is the best way to go. Okay. So similarly, I feel I also we were in a discussion the other day.
Hmm.
There might, just taking a simple example, right? If you look at LLM might be sitting at a cloud layer because
LLM
they
is a
will be
large language model.
yeah, large language model might be sitting at in a data center heavily with a very big data set, churning the insights out. But when you are actually dealing with customer, maybe edge SLM running on a device. I mean, the chips of the latest iPhones are so powerful that we can actually run some of the LLMs, the older, just 6 months back LLMs on them. So when LLMs can be run, I'm sure the SLMs are going to be the need of the hour, right? So those customizations, Subrata, might actually happen at the edge. So edge AI is going to be the next big thing, because it might be that you start your day taking insights from a central server, having the up-to-date information. Then if the entire day you are not even connected on cloud and you are running your SLM, talking to your local highly customized player. By end of day, you come back and again what you learned from, say, Bhubaneswar, from a Jharkhand remote Ranchi, from Tamil Nadu's Madurai, all these guys might be pumping it back to their the SLM will create its insight, create the incremental data or the insight, and push it back to the LLM when you are back or your day ends.
What is
So
what is what is SLM?
small language models. So these are very the their parameters are limited. They are not really, the token consumptions are limited. They are trained on uh, like not more than few billion parameters. That's how
And
they
you apply
can,
them into some very specific industry
very
segments or very
specific use
specific
cases.
areas rather than making it more generic. Okay.
Absolutely. So now the problem that we, at least 6 months back when these were not even point of conversation, we thought that LLM was like that big, like some, it's like a monolithic intelligence machine which can just be thrown, any question can be thrown at it and it will churn and get back. Yes, it can still do it, but the efficiency talk that we have been having in 2024 guides us towards a very distributed architecture type, right? Where you can do a lot of things on edge, you can get your insights then and there. Example in healthcare, when you're dealing with a critical patient, you can maybe define a rule saying that that conversation will never go to cloud. It will only stay with the device that is in that particular hospital in a biometric driven password for the customer patient, so the patient can just willfully log in, have that conversation, and then and there in that end pos machine you log out, so that data doesn't go out anywhere, right? So I think use cases of this nature will slowly start happening, where we will start leveraging the best of both worlds. So that's how I think it will evolve in a highly customized market or different customer behavior sort of.
And I think that brings us to the product market fit, right? Once you're able to identify the use cases, you have done the POC. What should they be thinking about in terms of ensuring they address the product market fit very well, especially if they're building AI-driven products?
Yeah, in the legacy uh,
Is there a
product,
different approach they should think from legacy product versus an
yes,
AI-driven product? Because
yes.
there are a lot of other nuances that comes into play which you need to bear in mind, probably, which in the legacy product you can delay or
Yes. So
not
in the
looking at.
past, when we used to look at product market fit, right, there was like a need or a customer requirement that was like a Venn diagram when we used to show it. Then there was a system which basically was like a capability built or solution that was built. And there was a third ring which was pricing, which was more like how do you monetize and all. And if any product which became successful, they always had that they were landing on that intersection of all three, right? Unfortunately, maybe AI is bringing, or fortunately, I don't know how we look at it. AI is bringing a fourth layer, a ring which might be an additional ring on top of this. Is what it's my personal take. I don't,
Mhm.
because no technology has been so fast paced like AI. I mean, we are talking about models becoming redundant in months here, right? Like even Oracle databases that I started,
Mm.
uh, the evolution was at least few years, right? Like we still had that luxury to learn a new stuff when it came. There was a runway. Now it is like we have GPT-3, became 4, became 4.0, became O1. Now people are already talking about GPT-5. Llama is talking about Llama 4 in next early year. So the pace at which things are moving, Subrata, is the reason maybe a fourth ring is coming. Because
Mm.
if we don't keep an eye on that evolution, and not just the LLMs. There are technology changes happening, right? The agents are going to be disruptive. AI agents that we are talking about will completely change the way we are dealing with things in 2025. The way we implement RAG was thought to be the retrieval augmented generation, where we combined our source data with LLMs, right? RAG we thought was like a aha moment for us some 6, 7 months back. Now we are talking about mixture of experts. Now we are talking about trees of problems. Now we are talking, I mean, all these terminologies, I don't want to make it technical here, but the frameworks to make things efficient are growing at a pace where we have not seen this happen. And it
Yes.
is not coming from one company or one industry or one zone or a country, right? One came from like uh, the trees of problems came from Paris, a company which came from Paris. Yesterday, we heard something come from Japan. Then there is huge things coming from China. Open source is driving things at a rate which is almost identical to proprietary. So when such things are happening, your product can be completely out of sync if we don't look at that ring. That is why I feel it's about time we not leave technology in the solutions bit, take AI specifically out of that solutions ring and create a separate ring, because constantly there has to be an AI product officer or whatever that name needs to be,
Hmm.
who can dedicatedly look at where is my product going out of sync when a new disruptive framework or a governance model or a regulation or anything is coming.
I think you make a very important point because technology is changing too fast. And if I'm building a product which is about 6 months cycle, by the time I finish my product, there's innovation that has happened over the time is phenomenally high. And how do I really catch up? So therefore, you need to have the ability to really pivot and adjust your product or innovation as you go on, rather than waiting for something to happen. And in fact, many of the legacy products which have been built over the period of time, now they are thinking the same thing. Now, how do I really change my product architecture? How do I really bring in new things which I could not do it earlier?
Yeah.
It's become very difficult to maintain, it's very difficult to get skill, and so on and so forth. Now, in addition to the technical side,
Hmm.
many startups also need some right guidance and support. And that's where mentorship come into play. So how important is mentorship in the AI space, and what role do startup ecosystems and communities play in terms of helping the founders to succeed?
Huge role, right? Because we don't want startup founders to, I mean, all these startup founders, many of them are very young. I think that is what is very, very, the passion just comes out in those conversations, right? And that is, we don't want that passion to die down. I think I sound slightly, I mean, already I look like, I'm talking as a 40-year-old now, so obviously the 20-year-olds look very young now. But that is the responsibility that we who are in our mid careers or who are experienced have in helping that ecosystem. Mainly because if they don't succeed, I think we might miss this bus, because here is an opportunity for us to excel not just at a regional level, not just at a industry level, but at a we do see a potential where we can play. India can play at a global level, where our products could be adopted across the globe, right? And that can come only when we have a robust startup ecosystem which builds innovative solutions which can eventually maybe become their own big companies, or they get absorbed into bigger companies, and that shows that innovation coming. That's how at least Silicon Valley grew, right? It either became a standout multi-billion dollar companies, or they got acquired and the legacy companies became more efficient. So I think that is why it is important that startups do reach out to mentors, incubation cells. I love the fact that many governments are setting up their missions. Next, I think in a week's time, Kerala is organizing Huddle, which is, I mean, it's going to be one of the biggest place where all of us are going to be there, and we are going to have startups come there, talk to us. So all these, I think, it's coming nicely together. We have the intellectual horsepower, we have the will from the corporate, we have the governments supporting us both at central, state. Everyone is understanding this is important. These three, when they come together, Subrata, the only thing is we have a pool of amazing kids coming out. And if
Yep.
we guide them with these three pillars, I think our next 2 decades could be a fascinating journey when it comes to AI.
So this question is for those founders, startup founders who are not really integrated with the incubators. So in India, we have networks like T Hub, and there are various other incubators, Startup India, growing, evolving rapidly. So how can founders best tap into these resources in the communities to really gain valuable support.
And the to add to that, right? Many a times, beyond these corporate incubators, beyond the government incubators, the good thing that we are seeing is even the local colleges are now jumping in. I think all the big colleges used to have it. The IITs, IIMs used to have it. I'm seeing that
Yeah.
idea go beyond the tier ones now. In fact, I actively go around colleges telling them to jump into this and enable their students to not just think from a placement perspective. In 5 years' time, I would love to see brochures where people talk. I two students from my campus created 100 million startup. I mean, those are the type of stories that colleges, even tier two and beyond, can aspire. And many of them have already joined that. I'm so happy that when I talk, they resonate. Some of the deans immediately say that, hey, I'm going to run this here, Vignesh. Let me do that with my students. Let's see what's coming out of our students. I think that's where it all starts. But to very specific your question, how do they reach out? Um, See, the best thing is there are so many meetups that happen in. Yes, we still have these meetups, which are physical meetups, are in the big cities. That is the disadvantage they will have. But there are a lot of meetups which are online. And that is where we love to see. Many of them who reach out to me are people sitting in distant villages, not villages, but distant tier two, tier three and beyond type of cities, right? And that is where uh, being on these platforms, being on these online spaces where you know what is happening can really help, because you will see a lot of people like me who are ready to help. And not just for what is at stake, okay, leave aside not even from a monetary perspective, but many a times it's so fulfilling to guide two young kids coming from a remote part of India with an idea, right? So that's so fulfilling. So I think I have a lot of friends who do that. So it's just about them using technology. Again, going back to technology, use your LinkedIn's, use your online platforms. I tell very jokingly, don't, instead of looking at your reels or something, make use of Instagram or your online platforms to find what is happening. Like follow the
Yeah.
big ones, like the handles of the big incubators, the
Yeah.
government initiatives. That will give you the information.
Great. My next question is about building team that can thrive. So, what sort of thing they should think about in terms of getting the right team in place? What sort of skill they should look for? How should they really go about building it?
Yeah, usually a single founder finds it very tough in this ecosystem. I have seen that mainly because uh, the product life cycle, as I said, has become smaller, shorter and shorter, and for a single founder to keep pace with all these dimensions becomes extremely challenging. So a good starting point could be someone divide the scope between one who is totally focused on understanding the business, getting the core reason why the company is there in the first place, right? All the product details, why the need, the problem, what you're solving, where you're going to play, etc., etc. And then a complementing skill set could be someone who is really very good at technology, sort of, because net, if it is a tech play, you don't want to leave that as a hindsight discussion. So both of them, if they are co-founders, it balances out. And as co-founders, you need to fight it out, right? That is what I keep telling. If you don't have fights, it's a problem. That means you're just compromising on a lot of things. So when if the question that we had on the market and the tech some few minutes back, balances when you have co-founders with these two dimensions. One very focused on product, and then someone who validates and says, hey, you are too aggressive, or this cannot be done from a tech stack perspective. That could be a good starting point. And as they scale, and the tech person will start building that tech stack, and then onboarding people who have that different, like, so if they are building it on Angular or React or Node.js, all these technologies that they need for client side, server side, that person will take care of it. The third, once you are having at least close to MVP, you need people like finance background who can monetize it, who bring in those experts at the right time. Then you need a governance officer when you really have MVP which you proved in a closed environment. So scale and bring these layers at the right time, because you don't want to be too early or you don't want to be too late. I mean, having too many cooks when you are trying to even just lift the product out might make it very slow. People might drag you down. And when you are really running pretty fast, if you don't have the guardrails of the CFOs and the ethics officer and the the chief data officer and all, you are going to somewhere have a legal problem because you will break down somewhere. So it's that right balance that you need to strike out.
In addition to the technical skills, given the pace of innovation, the pace of progress that is happening, and regulatory frameworks around which we operate, um, and also is about focusing on the real problems. I talked about use cases. So there will be an opportunity at time for people have to work on ambiguity. People have to have resilience to be able to come up when things change. People should have the right mindset to pivot when
Yeah.
things go wrong. Should they Are there ways that they can develop these capabilities, or is there something which, by working with the mentors, working with partners, they develop and build this? How young entrepreneurs, startups start having these sort of capabilities built into it?
Yeah, I think the best thing that is happening is when we see these young entrepreneurs, most of them are very active learners, very quick learners, and not someone who waits for things to happen, right? Like if they feel that something is needs to be tested, they'll test it out. At least the successful ones who are doing very well, who we talk to, are the ones who don't wait for, okay, let me go and hire a technical person, then that person will evaluate. That is time lost, 2 months lost. They are out of the race already. So they either download. Example, the other day someone downloaded Cursor. That person is a BCom grad, but downloaded Cursor, integrated it, found it out how coding will look like. They do it hands on. Many of them do it hands on. Guidance, obviously, that is, they're too young, you need that guidance. But if you guide them even for 15 minutes, it is like adding 2 weeks to their effort. That is what I've seen. You guide them for 15 minutes, bring them back on track. They feel like they have achieved 2 weeks worth of work, because that is the way they're thinking. They're so fast these days, which is really encouraging.
Okay, good. We covered quite a lot of ground. Now I'm going to ask you about the future trends. Startups trying to into this, should they really watch out for? What should they really think about? What should they really start preparing for, keeping the future in mind?
Yeah, one thing that will really happen, unfortunately, things are so fast that we might not be even able to predict beyond 2025. So
Hmm.
even if I look at just 2025, right, I see the world taken over by AI agents in the short run, because there are a lot of decisions in all these use cases, Subrata, where you don't really need human in the loop. I mean, it can be very simple, like decisions which can be taken by the machine, and not by no means these are the RPA type of robotic process automation type work that we are talking about. It involves a chain of thought, right? Even with a chain of thought, if you bring that agentic response to the human loop by having that final approval, you save so much of bandwidth that goes in our daily activities. Example, and very simple example, right? Already Amazon tried it with Alexa and there's few other apps. If my purchasing pattern or my needs or everything is tracked, maybe my basket every day is already pre-filled with my choice of what I need. And the only thing it comes for validation is, Vignesh, this is what I'm going to place a particular, I'm going to submit it to your e-commerce platform for delivery tomorrow. You still leave the decision to the human. But when 90% or 80% of the work is already done, it just saves so much of my time, right? So that is the use case, one such use case. There are every leader, if you follow any CEO of the leading tech company, if you're seeing right from Jensen to anyone in the Sundar and Nadala, anyone you go and hear, all of them are telling 2025 will be where agents will be like ruling, multi-agent
So
ecosystem will start
if
coming.
I'm CFO, and traditionally I would probably get some 3 or 4 financial analysts to help me pick time. So are you envisioning a time where I don't need those human analysts? All I can do is to just get agents on
Yeah,
service
yeah,
on a subscription basis, and they
yeah,
can run 24 by 7. They don't get
yeah,
tired. I can iterate multiple
yeah,
times. Are you envisioning a situation like that?
yeah. That is what is going to happen. Uh, I'm separating the conversation between large companies because then there will be a huge question on what will happen to the workforce. Okay, so I'll park that question away at this point. But just focusing on our topic of startup, imagine how powerful it will become for a startup because
Hmm.
the pain of hiring a person, validating a person, are you good at the accounts? Are you good at regulations? Are you good at taxation policies? Are you good at
Hmm.
reconciling my book? Can you file my corporate taxes? I mean, these were all, we had to spend, we had needed a talent team to go through resumes, shortlist people, scan for them, onboard them, give them tools, give them equipments. A startup founder in future can subscribe to 5 agents: tax agent, accounting agent, maybe 4 or 5 agents. And there might be a consultant from that agent company who might work with you for 15, 20 days, configure everything for you, give even the proof of concept, and you are up and running. Maybe to your question, right? You have the Jarvis of Iron Man ready for you because the startup founder now has multiple people to help take decisions, and he or she can rely on that particular platform.
I talked
Yes.
about the ecosystem that is getting developed, which are especially in the startups. They don't have to do a lot of things on their own. But we talked about how data is very critical, how regulation is very critical, how ensuring privacy is very critical, or even building the data, for example, synthetic
Yeah.
data. So today, many other players who may be providing this, but they will probably provide it through agents,
Yeah.
which people can subscribe and get all that they need.
Yeah. That is, I think, it was Mark Zuckerberg, I think so, in his 2 months back when he spoke about the OpenAI and the models, right? In that video, he said, in the next 2 years or next 1 year, he said we might have the number of agents might actually be more than the number of
More than the number of
humans.
humans. Yep.
Yes. So
Yes.
that is what is
Yes.
going to happen.
Fascinating conversations, Vignesh. Thank you for your time. Before we go, we have something called Spark Round.
Huh?
Fun questions. If you could have a dinner with any 3 people,
Okay.
dead or alive,
Okay.
who would they be?
Wow. Dead or alive. Okay. Uh, Currently, if I look at it, I would really want to pick Jensen in the current world, number one.
Okay.
Uh, Number two, I would like to get someone like Einstein, mainly because of the way they thought, completely different. And maybe Da Vinci type of a person, because combining multiple I mean, there are very few people who are multifaceted and geniuses in multiple fields, right? I think Da Vinci was one of them. So how would these 3 people work together if they really come together would be fascinating to discuss it on a dinner.
What is the one book or movie or podcast that has changed your perspective on life or work?
Wow. One movie or book. I'll say the movie. Let me just think. There are many, but I am not a big full movie person, but I like some pieces of the movies, right? Because that's how it is. Like all about a Sunday. I think that football speech of Al Pacino where he talks about what is a team and how he says that when you fight for every inch, you basically win the game, right? Or, the famous Rocky Balboa's speech to his
Yeah.
son where he says, life is not all rainbows and sunshines, right? So that's what I take from them. From podcasts, I hear to the leading people like how the speech of some what really touches me were like speeches like Dwayne Johnson's when he says that he had $7 in his pocket from where he came from, or the Magic Johnsons, the sports greats, right? Like how they basically are pushing the boundaries. Those are the ones I usually listen to. Book wise, a big fan of Anne Ryan because both the books, be it Atlas Shrugged or Fountainhead, gives us a very, extreme crowd, right? Either they are big fans or they hate it. But some of these are what I really love when I look at it from these three dimensions.
Who should we have as our next guest on this Spark and Forge podcast?
Wow. Okay. Maybe a young startup founder who is successful because I think all the big people, the experienced people, sometimes we might miss what is the ground reality or the challenges. So getting someone who is really successful at
Really
24,
successful.
25, and then tell them that, hey, what did you do? Because I'm very curious at 18, I could never think like them. As they are millionaires at 22, so they would have started thinking at 16 that they wanted to be millionaires. So where did I miss that? I'm curious to learn from them. How did they even think so big?
We'll try. We'll
Yeah,
try. Vignesh, thank you so much for taking the time to join. I really appreciate it. It's fun talking to you. You bring so much of new perspective. I really enjoyed this conversation, and it's been packed with so much of insights, some tips, and I'm sure some of the startup founders or established players or entrepreneurs or even the tech leaders who may be listening today, they can take away some of those tips. We could not cover so much of details in the ground because of the time, but I think our attempt has been to sort of explore the space from the startups angle to see how AI could be used as one of the growth opportunities, both from technology perspective, because it is not only just exciting, but it has got a huge impact to play, and also look at from the business angle to see how the use cases really make a big difference, because at the end of
yeah.
the day it is the impactful use cases that make a big story. So thank you so much for your time, and to all the listeners, thank you so much for joining us on the Spark and Forge podcast. And if you found this today's episode inspiring, so don't forget to subscribe, share, and then leave your comments for Vignesh and me. And as always, keep that spark alive, keep forging ahead, and remember that every challenge is just another opportunity to learn and grow. Stay well, stay safe, and I look forward to seeing you sometime again. Bye for now.
Thank you, Subrata. Thank you. Have a great day.